Well, for some US politicians, the perceived threat from Russia is so serious that they believe anyone who makes unconventional decisions must be taking orders from the Kremlin. Senator John McCain has accused his fellow Congressman Rand Paul of working for Vladimir Putin after he objected to a treaty on Montenegro joining NATO. When later commenting on the accusation, Senator Paul also didn't mince his words.
The only conclusion you can draw when he walks away is he has no argument to be made. He has no justification for his objection to having a small nation be part of NATO that is under assault from the Russians. So I repeat again, the senator from Kentucky is now working for Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think he makes a really strong case, for term limits. I think maybe he's past his prime. I think maybe he's gotten a little bit unhinged.
Well, let's discuss this story now with Ron Paul, Rand Paul's father and former member of the US House of Representatives himself. Welcome, Ron. Really interesting to get your take on this. Obviously, it's your son involved in all of this. Pretty heated exchange. And according to Senator McCain, you're the father of a traitor. What was your response when you first heard about this?
Well, it was so outrageous, it's almost not worth using a lot of energy dealing with it because it's just ridiculous. But this whole idea, the one thing that is lost in the combat that they're doing on the Senate floor, because that's really outside of the Senate rules to deal with individuals like that. But the issue, of course, I think is important. Of course, I don't like NATO, and Trump claimed he didn't like NATO, and now they're talking about expanding NATO, and McCain claims 98% of the senators are going to vote for this and accept that. I think that's the real issue. Then he throws it out that they want to be in NATO because the Russians are coming. So that to me is once again outrageous things. But I think he overstepped overstepped the line when he started making it personal, attacking my son. That to me seems to be the outrageous thing for him to do that, because he's not dealing with answering the questions of those of us who don't believe that we should expand NATO at this particular time, and that it has and we don't happen to believe that McCain is leveling with us and saying, well, the main reason we need Montenegro in NATO is to protect them against the Russians. I don't think people are going to buy into that. I don't even think the people who are for Montenegro going into NATO would use that as an argument. I think that's McCain speaking, off the record, or not making any sense.
Is it a bit too easy now, and basically to use Russia as an insult, and if you think back a few hundred years, they used to tar and feather people when they wanted to shame them. It seems like these days you just associate them with Russia. Is it becoming a bit too convenient now to use it as a weapon to isolate people?
Yeah, but I don't think it's quite as bad as it might seem. I think you're exactly right, but I think they've overdone it, where people just totally ignore it. I don't think people are going to say, well, John McCain said this, and he's a military guy, and he ran for president, so he's a credible person. I think I haven't read one thing in our media that was sort of saying, we need to do something about this Rand Paul, and listening to McCain. I think McCain loses credibility. And people who resort to this type of a tactic, I think they lose credibility. And when there's something serious, nobody's going to give them any serious consideration.
I'd like to also speak about comments that came recently from the US ambassador to the UN. Nikki Haley said that America should never trust Russia. Now, just trying to be really objective about this, it seems like a really remarkable statement. If Russia's equivalent of Mother Teresa was to be elected into office, she should still not be trusted, according to that comment. What did you make of it?
Well, I would say that I think she's in a position called ambassador. I think they're supposed to be diplomatic. I would say that's not very diplomatic, but it raises a political questions for us, for me in particular, because one of the reasons I wanted to give Trump a pass and complimented him was that he was looking for a better relationship with Russia, and yet his ambassador speaks like this. So that's an inconsistency that pretty obvious. But I just don't think that it makes sense for her to do that, to blame Russia.
The Yahoo hacking charges, they've come to the fore, of course, in the news. And that, again, adds fuel to the fire of using Russia as the sort of bogeyman. And there may well be guilt there, as suggested in the news reports. But once again, no proof as yet. What's your take on the story?
On the hacking business?
The hacking of Yahoo accounts, yeah.
Truth is yeah, I would think that it's complex, and I don't know the real truth about it. It's more than I can digest and say that, I know what's really going on here. I'm pretty suspect. I'm a libertarian, and we don't exactly have blind faith and confidence in governments, and that includes probably most of the governments, because there's a lot of shenanigans that go on that we don't like. We don't like a lot of power in government. We want to see more liberty for the individual, and therefore all this hacking business that's going on, I imagine all countries are participating in this, and when there's a political advantage to using it, and I think that happened in our campaign, in this country, whether, in trying to blame Trump for getting some special help from Russia. Well, it looks like the associations with Hillary and Russia were every bit as strong. So that's the politics of it all. And I think it's just such a shame that we get to that point and not deal with some of the bigger issues. The issues in foreign policy that we as libertarians would like to talk about is why do we have a foreign policy of intervention and being involved in all the conflicts of the world and our troops overseas and bankrupting our country? And that is, to me, the big issue. And I think sometimes some of these accusations are distractions, especially when probably both sides are doing a lot of this anyway.